Trying to decide whether to live inside of the city or outside of the city can be a big decision. Rather than starting your decision from scratch, let's start by talking about some of the pros and cons of living in DC. I'm a big fan of getting the bad news out of the way first, so let's start by talking about some of the less than ideal parts about living in DC. One of the first things that you'll notice about DC is that it's pretty cramped. It's a very small space, just over 68 square miles, with quite a few folks living there, just under 680,000 people. This means that if you're looking for a lot of space, DC may not be the best option for you. There are definitely some areas of DC where you can get a little more space with your property, but in general, they're not super common and they're going to cost a fair bit more. For transparency, many of the surrounding areas also don't have a ton of space, but they do tend to have a little bit more than DC. One of the follow-on effects of this lack of space is that there tends to be a lot of traffic and parking can be pretty bad, especially if there are no parking garages around. This traffic is especially noticeable during rush hour, when folks are trying to get into the city and out of the city. What could normally take you 20 minutes could take double that or more depending on where you're going and what routes you're taking. And that doesn't even factor in if there are any delays due to accidents, road closures, or other extra delays on the roads. Speaking of road closures, those tend to pop up pretty frequently in DC, thanks to the many events that happen in the city. DC is a hub for a ton of different events, and while events are great if you're attending them and enjoying all that they have to offer, they can be a little less great when you have to deal with the after effects of road closures and increased traffic as a result. If you're not heading anywhere around the time of the event, the close proximity could actually be a positive thing, and I'll talk about that a little later in the video. Another potentially really big drawback to living in the city is the cost of living. Although it's not the most expensive area to live around here, DC is pretty pricey. To give you an idea, according to bestplaces.net, DC is about 50% more expensive than the rest of the United States. That's a pretty big jump. Additionally, it's a bit more expensive even than some of the surrounding areas. If you have the budget for it, you probably won't notice it much, but it is still something that I like to make sure people are aware of. Finally, semi-related to the cost of living are the taxes you pay living in DC. Compared to Virginia and Maryland tax rates, DC can actually get pretty expensive and pretty quickly, with property taxes being one of the few exceptions that come in lower than Maryland or Virginia. To give you an idea, income taxes in DC start at 4% of your taxable income and go all the way up to 11%. As a comparison, both Maryland and Virginia state income tax rates cap out at 5.75%. Even if you add Maryland's county tax rates on top of the state rate, the highest that you'll pay is closer to 9%. The big caveat here is that how much you pay in taxes will definitely depend on what your taxable income is, but generally, you can expect to pay a little bit more in DC. As I mentioned earlier, property taxes in DC for residential buildings are where you'll catch a break in your taxes. Generally, you'll pay no more than 85 cents per $100 of assessed value, which is a fair bit lower than both Maryland and Virginia. So I guess it's kind of a trade-off. Do you care more about property taxes or income taxes? It's all up to you when you're deciding where to live. Now that we've gotten the bad news out of the way, let's talk about the many great parts about living in DC. Like I mentioned earlier, there are a ton of events going on in DC. Examples of the kinds of events that you could encounter include, but are not limited to, the National Cherry Blossom Festival, a Taste of the DMV Food and Culture Festival, the Washington, D.C. Water Lantern Festival, the National Book Festival, which is great for the book nerds among us, and the Washington, D.C. Auto Show. There are also a lot of things that happen every single day that are really great. This could include anything from neighborhood gatherings, farmers markets, and limited time pop-up events. As you can see, there's really no shortage of activities available to take advantage of, and they happen throughout the year so that you don't have to worry about a stretch of boredom. Unless, of course, you're really feeling like a quiet time in your life, and I totally support that. On top of all of the various events and activities in this city, there are also great options for shopping and dining. Some of my favorite dining options in the whole DC metro area are located in DC, and there are also a ton of really cool, unique shops that are great to hang out in, even if you're just doing some window shopping. In addition to all of the local, one-of-a-kind shops and restaurants, you'll also find plenty of more well-known restaurant and shopping options that you would probably find in other cities as well. This means that pretty much whatever you're looking for, you'll probably find it. Depending on where you're going for your shopping, you may even be able to get there without a car. And that's my next point. Getting around in DC without a car is really easy. Whether you're using public transit, to include metro and buses, or taking advantage of the many scooters or bikes for rent that you'll find along the way, it's pretty easy to get where you're going. Plenty of places are easy to get to as a pedestrian as well, thanks to DC's well-kept sidewalks. Although I mentioned in the last section that traffic can get really bad, if you're using a car to get around and you happen to live in the city and work in the surrounding areas, you're more likely to be going opposite of most of the rush hour traffic both ways, which means that you're going to cut down on the normal awfulness that is the DC area traffic. There will still probably be a little bit of traffic, but it won't be nearly as bad as if you were trying to go with the bulk of the rush hour drivers into the city. The final point that I'll cover that's a big win if you're looking to live inside of DC is that there are all sorts of housing types available to suit your needs. Need minimal space? Check out one of the many condos available. Looking for more space? Check out some of the detached houses spread throughout the city. There are also plenty of options in between. The costs for housing in DC cover a wide range of prices to allow you to find something that will fit within your budget. Do you have any other questions or want more information? Feel free to reach out and let's chat. If you've decided that you'd prefer to live outside of the city, keep watching for these next videos to help you decide which area might be right for you.